The steady drizzle tapped gently against the foggy glass windows of Willow and Bean Café. Under the soft yellow lights, Declan Hayes loosened his tie and sighed as if shedding an invisible layer of pressure. Another day had passed sealed with the signing of a multi-million-dollar deal. For him, success had become too familiar and thus utterly dull. At 38, Declan had everything people dreamt of: a vast fortune, a sterling reputation in the business world, and a life most would call perfect. But deep within his chest something still felt missing, like a puzzle piece long buried in the past. He glanced at his watch. It was past 7:30. The tension from board meetings still clung to him, like the condensation on the window pane. He needed this calm, a brief moment in the whirlwind of a mechanical existence before returning to his cold penthouse. The usual Americano, Mr. Hayes, the barista asked with a familiar smile. Declan nodded, his eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window outside under the cafe's awning. A small figure huddled, a child, no older than 6, sitting silently on the soaked sidewalk. The light, spilling from inside, cast a glow on the child's delicate face, and it struck something deep in his heart. Children shouldn't be wandering alone in the rain like this. "Hold my coffee, please," he said quickly, stepping outside. The little girl looked up as his silhouette blocked the light. Her large brown eyes met his without a hint of fear. On the contrary, there was an unusual maturity in them. Her clothes were clean but worn, and a small backpack was clutched tightly to her chest like a shield. "Are you okay?" Declan asked gently, crouching to her eye level. "Where are your parents?" "I'm waiting for my grandpa," she replied clearly. "He's usually a little late." He nodded, just as she tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear, a small gesture that suddenly tightened something in his chest. Too familiar, too much like someone he once knew. "My name is Declan. What's yours?" "Lila Bennett," she said, extending her small hand with solemn formality. Bennett. The surname rang in his head like a blow. It couldn't be. It must just be a coincidence. "It's getting dark." "Lila, would you like to come inside and wait? I'll buy you a hot chocolate. How about that?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly. When she stood up and took his hand, her sleeve slid back, revealing a crescent-shaped birthmark on her wrist. Declan froze. He knew that birthmark. He had one just like it. His mother used to call it the Hayes mark, a rare hereditary trait passed only through blood. That birthmark, it's special. He stammered, his throat dry. "My mom had one just like it too," Lila said simply, "but I never met her. She died when I was born." Declan's world tilted. The wind outside surged, stirring long dormant memories. "What was your mother's name?" he asked. Barely a whisper. "Isabelle Bennett." Lila replied, her eyes curious. "Did you know her?" That name hit him like a crashing wave. Isabelle, the woman he had loved more than anyone, the one he lost after college. "Lila, when's your birthday?" "February 12th, she answered. Exactly 9 months after the last night he and Isabelle were together. "Grandma said my dad's name was Declan, too," Lila added innocently. "But he left before I was born." Standing there in the rain, with a child who had Isabelle's eyes and the Hayes birthmark, Declan felt the entire world he'd built over 2 decades collapse in an instant. 2 weeks later, he sat frozen in his office, eyes locked on the DNA test results. The words 99.9% probability of paternity blurred as he blinked. "No way," he muttered, though every piece of evidence was undeniable. A soft knock sounded before Tessa Quinn, his personal assistant, entered the room. The investigator called. They've confirmed Isabelle's death certificate. And here's Lila's birth certificate, she said, handing over a file. Your name is clearly listed as the biological father. Declan's throat tightened. Why didn't she say anything? We may have broken up, but... Tessa hesitated. According to her parents, Isabelle called your office dozens of times, but what? He frowned. At the time, all her calls were marked as handled by Mr. Vincent Crowley. A chill crept up his spine. Vincent, his uncle, his benefactor, the man who had supported him after his parents died. Also, the one who managed most of the family estate until Declan turned 40. Or until I had a family of my own. Declan whispered, the puzzle pieces spun in his mind. The birthmark, the name, the blocked calls, the hidden records. Lila, there's more, Tessa said, pulling a few old envelopes from the folder, letters from Isabelle. All returned, and the handwriting. I'm certain it's Crowley's. Declan clenched his fists, rage boiling in his veins. He blocked everything, so I'd never know I had a child. The room was so quiet he could hear the rain tapping against the window. But inside him a storm was rising. He was no longer the cold-hearted millionaire. He was a father who had just found his daughter and a man about to confront the cruelest betrayal of his life. Declan Hayes shot up from his chair. His heart clenched as if someone had gripped it tightly. I need to see my uncle. Now Vincent Crowley's office was tucked into the corner of the top floor, radiating a level of authority that matched the man himself. At 65, Vincent remained impeccably groomed. Silver hair, neatly combed eyes sharp as blades. When Declan entered, he merely raised an eyebrow without rising from his leather chair. You came unexpectedly. Is something so urgent that it couldn't wait for notice? Vincent asked, voice calm. Declan tossed the DNA test results onto the desk. You knew about this, didn't you? Vincent glanced down, his expression unreadable. Your affair with that Bennett girl, right? That's ancient history, it's not. I have a daughter. A faint tightening in Vincent's jaw, brief, but Declan caught it. So what? It's unfortunate, but it doesn't concern the company. He replied, voice cold as ice. You kept it from me. Isabelle's calls, her letters, all blocked. Why, Vincent leaned forward. You were 25, about to take over the company. An illegitimate child would have ruined everything. Your future, the Hayes name, I earned this. I worked for it. You had no right to decide for me. I protected you. Vincent insisted she wasn't good enough for you. Neither is that child. Declan clenched his fists, the words forced through his teeth. Her name is Lila, and she's my daughter. What are you planning to do? Vincent asked, his eyes glinting. Raise a child. You know nothing about a single overworked businessman thinks he can play father. Declan turned to leave, pausing at the door. I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. I'm filing for custody. Vincent chuckled dryly, the sound slicing through the silence like a cold blade. You think a court will hand her over to a man who's never changed a diaper in his life? Don't let guilt destroy your career. Declan didn't respond. The door closed behind him with a decisive thud. The battle had begun. The Bennett home sat quietly in a peaceful neighborhood, its faded blue paint contrasted by the carefully trimmed garden out front. In the car, Declan stared at the steering wheel, his palms slick with sweat. This wasn't a negotiation, not a business deal. This was his daughter. 3 deep breaths, then he stepped out. The door opened to reveal an older man, lean but kind-eyed. "I'm Edward Bennett, Isabelle's father. I'm Declan Hayes. I believe you've been expecting me." Edward's gaze wasn't harsh, but it wasn't entirely warm either. "Lila's excited. She hasn't stopped talking about the man with the same birthmark." Inside, Helen Bennett sat stiffly on the sofa, her eyes piercing through Declan as if to expose his soul. And he understood. To her, he was the man who abandoned her daughter while she was pregnant. "Mrs. Bennett," he nodded politely. "You look just like the photos," she replied curtly. "Isabelle kept them all." Declan's heart clenched at the sound of her name. Words caught in his throat until Lila appeared. She paused when she saw him, her eyes lighting up with surprise. "You really came?" "I promised," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "I have something for you." He held out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver necklace holding a photo of Isabelle, the picture he'd found in an old dorm album. "This is my mom." Lila whispered, her fingers gently brushing the image. "That's your mom." Declan knotted his throat tight. "I think you should have it." She looked at him for a long moment, then asked frankly, "Are you really my dad?" The question stunned him. "Yes." "Lila, I'm your dad." "Then why didn't you come before?" There was no bitterness, just an innocent question from a child. He glanced at the Bennetts, then back to her eyes. "I didn't know you existed. If I had, I would have come long ago." Lila tugged at his hand and led him upstairs. The small room had crayon drawings all over the walls. While she fetched her pictures to show off, Edward sat beside Declan. "She has your smile," he said thoughtfully, "but her eyes, they're Isabelle's. She always believed you'd come back." Edward continued, even when there was no hope. "If I had known," Declan's voice broke. "What matters is that you're here now." Edward said, "The question is, are you staying?" Before Declan could answer, his phone buzzed, a message from Tessa Quinn. "Urgent. Vincent filed for guardianship. Lawyer is waiting at the office." Helen stood in the doorway. "Your real life is calling, Mr. Hayes. Lila doesn't need another man who shows up and disappears." Declan pocketed the phone. He looked her straight in the eye. "My real life is right here, Mrs. Bennett. I'm not going anywhere." Almost as if summoned by those words, Lila burst into the room, beaming. "Will you come again tomorrow?" He took her tiny hand in his. "Every day, if you'll let me." For the first time in many years, Declan knew exactly where he belonged. "You're doing it wrong." Lila giggled as she watched Declan fumble with her hair ties. The hands, once skilled at signing multi-million-dollar contracts, were now clumsy with too little curls. His career had never taught him this, but her eyes, her laughter, taught him a lesson deeper than any MBA ever could. "Sorry, sweetheart. I've never done this before," Declan Hayes said awkwardly, trying once again to tie Lila's curly black hair into 2 pigtails. A task that seemed simple enough was proving a tangled mess for a man who had once negotiated $100 million deals. 3 weeks into officially stepping into the role of father, Declan had realized that all his leadership skills, crisis management strategies, and even his knack for analytical thinking were useless in the world of kids' sleepless nights and bunny-shaped lunchboxes. "I can help," a voice called from the classroom door. Declan turned to see Amelia Vaughn, Lila's teacher, smiling with amusement. Dropping his daughter off each morning had become a small daily nightmare. "You don't mind?" he exhaled with relief. With practiced hands, Amelia quickly handled Lila's hair just as the school bell rang. While Lila ran off to the reading corner, she turned to Declan. "You hanging in there. Is it that obvious I'm struggling?" Declan gave a wry smile. "All new parents do," she reassured him. Even the ones who've had 6 years to practice. Declan's phone buzzed. Another message from Vincent Crowley. He silenced it. Amelia leaned in and lowered her voice. "Lila's been drawing pictures of you in art class. She tells everyone my dad came back from a long trip. That's progress." Declan felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. A small victory, but one that meant everything. "Thank you for telling me that," he said sincerely. "Parent night is this Thursday. I know it's short notice, but—" "I'll be there," Declan said without hesitation. As he walked out of the school gates, his phone rang again. It was his lawyer. Vincent had filed a petition requesting a psychological evaluation of Declan, claiming that his sudden interest in Lila was a sign of a midlife crisis that could jeopardize the child's stability. "He's desperate," Declan muttered through gritted teeth. "There's more," the lawyer added. "He's called an emergency board meeting claiming your parenting is affecting the company's operations." Back at the office, Tessa Quinn was waiting with a towering stack of files. "I've cleared your meeting schedule so you can pick up your daughter and found these," she said, handing him a stack of books, parenting guides, father-daughter activity books, and the preschool's event calendar. Declan took the books too, moved to speak. "Thank you. One more thing." Tessa lowered her voice. "Vincent's been meeting with Darren Cole, Isabelle's ex-boyfriend, after you two broke up. I don't know what they're planning, but it's nothing good." Declan nodded, his expression darkening. Learning how to be a father was already hard. Doing it while fighting someone like Vincent Crowley made it 10 times harder. That night, after putting Lila to bed, the sleepy little girl asked softly, "Are you gonna leave again?" Declan kissed her forehead. "No, Lila. I'm staying forever." For the first time since discovering his daughter existed, he felt like she might finally believe him. The next day, Declan climbed to the attic of Edward and Helen Bennett's home, where Isabelle's old belongings were stored. In a dark corner, he found a small cardboard box. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to him. None had ever been sent. "We didn't know about these," Helen said, her tone less harsh than before. She must have written them while she was pregnant. With trembling hands, Declan opened the first letter, dated 8 years ago. "Declan, I have important news. I'm pregnant. I've called your office 17 times. Your uncle says you're too busy." I don't believe him. Each letter was a cry for help, a quiet hope, a lonely dream from a young woman trying to hold on to what mattered most. The last letter was written just days before Isabelle died from childbirth complications. The final line shattered him. "I believe you'd still want to know about her. I named her Lila. She has your birthmark. Declan, I hope one day that the two of you will find each other." Grief and rage burned through Declan like twin fires. Vincent hadn't just stolen his daughter. He had robbed Isabelle of her final years. The next morning, financial blogs exploded with headlines. Declan Hayes suspected of using his daughter to gain tax breaks. An inside source claimed he was only playing the role of father for financial advantage. Declan immediately called Lila's school. Amelia Vaughn answered, her voice troubled. "There's been a little issue. Some kids teased Lila. She's really upset." He rushed over. Lila sat alone in a corner of the playground, tears streaming down her cheeks. Zach said you only want me for money, she whispered. Is it true? Declan knelt before her, the words stabbing straight into his heart. Never, Lila. You're the most important thing in my life, but you're always busy. And when I spilled orange juice on your papers, you got mad. Her quiet honesty stung more than any accusation. She wasn't wrong. He had let work intrude on moments that should have belonged only to her. I'm still learning how to be a good dad, he said, but I promise I'm trying. That night as Declan organized his documents, the door swung open. Vincent Crowley entered unannounced. This charade has gone on long enough, he said, tossing a stack of files onto the desk. You're destroying the family's reputation. Declan's eyes darkened. Every one of Vincent's moves was calculated. He couldn't let Declan and Lila become a family, because that meant losing control, losing the legacy, losing power. But this time, Declan Hayes was no longer the easily manipulated young man he used to be. Isabelle dated someone else while she was pregnant. Vincent Crowley's voice rang out coldly. There's a chance Lila isn't your child. The blood in Declan Hayes' veins seemed to freeze. He hadn't yet reacted when Vincent continued sharply. DNA tests can be faked. The Bennetts need money. Think about it, Declan. This could all be a trap. Vincent walked away, leaving behind a chilling silence. Doubt began to seep through Declan's mind. Like a slow bleed, Isabelle had never mentioned anyone else. But what if there was something he didn't know? A message came from an unknown number. I know the truth about Isabelle. Meet me tomorrow. Come alone. Attached was a photo of Isabelle standing next to another man, dated at a time when she and Declan still had their final connection. The ground beneath what had once felt like a firm foundation began to tremble. The café where the meeting was arranged was nearly empty. The man who walked in looked worn down, disheveled hair, eyes heavy with the weight of a long-delayed decision. You're Declan Hayes, right? He said, sitting down. I'm Darren Cole. I dated Isabelle for a while after you two broke up. Declan gave a small nod. You sent the photo, and I was paid 10 grand by Vincent Crowley to say Isabelle was pregnant while she was with me. Darren said bluntly. He even gave me some doctored pictures. All fake. A wave of relief swept over Declan, followed by seething fury. Why are you telling me this now? Because Isabelle deserved better. Darren replied, she never forgot you. When she found out she was pregnant, she ended things with me immediately. I was at the hospital the day she died. Her last words were, "At last, I'll find him. I'll let him meet our daughter." Declan felt like a hammer had struck his chest. For years, he had believed Isabelle had intentionally left him. But the truth was, she had fought until her final breath to reunite him with their daughter. Without wasting another second, Declan drove straight to the company headquarters. The board meeting was in session. Vincent was speaking, trying to tighten his grip on control while preaching the importance of stability. Sorry to interrupt, Declan said as he stepped into the room, his gaze sweeping across the faces. This is highly irregular. Vincent scowled. I'm still the CEO, Declan said firmly, placing his hand on the conference table. And I have an announcement. He looked each board member in the eye, unflinching. Starting today, I'm taking a 3-month leave of absence. My daughter needs me, and I need to become the father she deserves. Vincent scoffed. You've just proven my point. No, you're wrong, Declan shot back. I finally understand what truly matters. I've missed holidays, missed love, missed life. But I won't miss my daughter's childhood. The room buzzed with murmurs. Vincent slammed his hand on the table. "You're throwing away everything your father built." "No, I'm saving what he truly valued that evening." Declan sat with Edward Bennett on the creaky swing on the porch. The elderly man's trembling hands opened an old photo album. "Isabelle used to keep a journal," Edward said, pulling out a small key tucked between the pages. "Before she died, she told us if anything ever happened, to give this to you." Inside the safe, Declan found a small notebook. Its ink faded with time, the early pages were scattered thoughts, but as he read on, the handwriting grew bolder, more emotional. "Tomorrow our daughter will be born," read the final line, "and I will find you, Declan. We'll be a family at last." He closed the notebook just as his phone vibrated. The lawyer's message: "Vincent Crowley has filed an emergency petition for custody of Lila, claiming you're psychologically unfit to be a father." The hearing was scheduled for next week. This fight was no longer just about reclaiming his daughter. He was fighting for the future Isabelle had believed in. Higher, Daddy. Lila giggled from the swing at the park. Saturdays had become their sacred routine. For the past month, Declan had cleared his entire schedule. No meetings, no calls, no contracts. For the first time in years, work was no longer the center of his life. Though Vincent continued his legal warfare, Declan stood his ground. He had chosen his daughter, and for the first time he knew he had made the right choice. "Watch me jump! Daddy, Lila!" Bennett shouted as she launched herself off the swing like a fearless little athlete. Declan Hayes' heart nearly leapt out of his chest as he watched her soar through the air, landing safely with a proud grin. "Be careful, sweetheart," he reminded her gently, though he couldn't hide the smile brought on by her daring spirit, so much like her mother's. "You worry exactly the way Isabelle used to say you would," came a familiar voice from behind. Declan turned and met the warm gaze of a woman standing by the fence. Chloe Carter. She smiled. "I was Isabelle's best friend." He recognized her from the photos in Isabelle's room. She nodded and sat beside him on the bench while Lila continued playing nearby. "The Bennetts told me you're fighting for her." Chloe said, "I'm glad you finally showed up." They talked for a while. Chloe filled in gaps in Isabelle's life that Declan had never known. She handed him a small box tied with a ribbon. "Isabelle made this for Lila. A memory box," she said. "Videos, handwritten letters for each birthday, for graduation, even for her future wedding." Declan's throat tightened. Isabelle had thought of everything. She had never given up hope that one day he and their daughter would find each other. That afternoon, Declan and Lila sat together in a room overflowing with memories. Photos, keepsakes, and the videos Isabelle had left behind brought her back to life in the present. "She's so beautiful," Lila whispered lightly, touching a framed picture. "The most beautiful woman I've ever known." Declan replied, voice rough with emotion. They watched a video Isabelle had recorded just before giving birth. Though tired, her voice was strong. "Lila, my sweet girl, if you're seeing this video, know that you are so loved. Your father will love you just as much as I do. Find him." One day, Lila looked up, eyes shimmering with tears. "Mom wanted us to be together. It was the most important thing in her life." Declan nodded, wrapping her in a hug. That night, just before bed, Lila pulled a drawing from beneath her pillow. 3 crayon figures, a tall man, a little girl, and a woman standing among the stars. It's you, me and Mommy, watching us from heaven," she explained. Declan swallowed hard. "This picture is perfect." As he got up to turn off the light, Lila whispered, "Good night, Daddy." 3 simple words, but they changed his entire world. "Good night, my little princess," Declan replied softly. Outside the room, his phone lit up a message from his lawyer. "Vincent Crowley has withdrawn the custody petition. Victory." He smiled and put away his phone. But the greatest victory of all was sleeping behind that door, having finally called him Daddy. 3:00 a.m. Declan was still in front of his laptop, struggling with the Wexford account, a contract now at risk of being pulled. 3 major clients had sent letters questioning continued partnership. "Company leadership is unstable," they wrote. Vincent's fingerprints were all over it. The kitchen light flicked on. Lila stood there in pajamas, hugging the gray stuffed elephant Declan had once given her. "Why aren't you asleep, Daddy?" "Just finishing up some work, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" "I dreamed about Mommy again." Declan lifted her into his arms, inhaling the soft scent of her hair. The nightmares had started after Vincent leaked to the press and allowed a reporter into her school. One article questioned whether a single man like Declan was fit to be a father. "Grandpa's coughing a lot," Lila whispered, and Grandma cried too. Declan's stomach twisted. Edward Bennett's health had been declining rapidly. Pneumonia, the doctor had said. But Declan knew it was the stress from the legal battles that was wearing him down. "Let's go visit them tomorrow," he promised. The next morning, while Declan was preparing breakfast, Amelia Vaughn called. A social worker came to the school. She said, her voice tight. They were asking about Lila's home life. Declan clenched his jaw. Vincent, at the school, the woman clearly had a script. She kept asking about Declan's ability to balance work and parenting. Amelia stepped in, standing beside Declan like a quiet ally. Her hand gently touched his, adding a strange but welcome warmth. Later, he thanked her as they walked out into the schoolyard. "Thanks for always being there for me." "Always," Amelia replied. Her smile stirred something in his heart, a feeling he hadn't known in a long time, not since Isabelle. That afternoon, Declan's phone rang. On the other end, Helen Bennett's voice shook with tears. "Edward's been hospitalized. This time it's his heart." She sobbed. "We're Lila's whole world." Her sentence trailed off, but the fear was clear. If Edward didn't pull through, would Lila come live with him? If the worst happens to Edward, Helen Bennett's sentence hung in the air. Would Lila go live with Declan Hayes permanently? When Declan arrived at the hospital, Vincent Crowley was already there, speaking softly with the doctor. As the doctor walked away, Declan stepped forward to confront him. "Trying to turn the Bennetts against me now." Vincent smiled calmly. "I truly care about Edward's health. Unlike you, I'm not using a child to manipulate people. You're the one who started all this." Declan growled. "You stole Isabelle from me. You stole Lila. And now, look what you've caused. Edward is in the hospital. Lila is having nightmares, and the company is bleeding millions." Vincent didn't flinch. "Face the truth. Everyone was better off before you decided to play father." A sliver of doubt crept into Declan's mind. Could Vincent be right? Was he the cause of all this chaos? A phone notification shattered his thoughts. A message from Tessa Quinn. Wexford account officially pulled over $3 million in revenue gone. Everything was falling apart, and Declan wasn't sure how much longer he could hold on. The boardroom fell silent as Declan Hayes walked in, 14 pairs of eyes turned toward him. At the head of the table sat Vincent Crowley, arms crossed, wearing a smug, satisfied smile. "Glad you made it," Vincent said coolly. "We're discussing the future of the company." Declan had just left the hospital. Edward's condition had stabilized, but it was still serious. He had no idea this emergency meeting had been called. "What is this meeting?" he asked bluntly. The board chairman adjusted his glasses. "Given current events, we've voted. You're being temporarily removed as CEO, effective immediately." The words hit like a direct blow. "On what grounds?" Declan asked, his voice icy. Vincent slid a stack of documents toward him. Wexford's exit triggered a domino effect. 4 other clients are pulling out. Stock is down 17% because of you. Declan snapped, "You convinced them to pull funding." "That's a serious accusation," Vincent replied evenly. "Do you have proof?" Declan didn't, and they all knew it. A sudden knock on the door interrupted Tessa. Quinn entered, pale. "You need to see this," she said. She handed Declan a tablet. The screen lit up with a sensational headline, "CEO's Dark Past, Declan Hayes abandoned, pregnant girlfriend below." It was a fabricated email, allegedly from Declan refusing responsibility for Isabelle's pregnancy. "This is fake," Declan said through clenched teeth. "I never wrote anything like this." Vincent put on a look of wounded sympathy. "Timestamp matches the time Isabelle tried to reach out. Maybe you forgot." Before Declan could reply, his phone rang. Helen Bennett. "A reporter showed us the email," she said bitterly. "How could you? All this time pretending you didn't know. It's not what it looks like. We don't want you near Lila anymore. Edward and I will file for permanent custody." The world spun around Declan. In one moment, he lost his company and possibly his daughter. Outside the boardroom, Amelia Vaughn was waiting. Her face was heavy with concern. "Parents are calling the school," she said quietly. "The principal thinks it's best if you don't attend the father-daughter dance tomorrow. You don't believe that garbage, do you?" Declan asked, voice raw with desperation. Her hesitation was the answer. "I want to believe you, but the evidence was manufactured by Vincent." Declan said, "You know that Amelia stepped back. I have to think about what's best for Lila. Maybe we should pause things." That night, Declan Hayes sat alone in his empty apartment, once filled with toys and storybooks for Lila's weekend visits. His phone buzzed, a message from Helen. "She's been crying nonstop since she found out she doesn't understand why you lied." A knock at the door. Vincent Crowley stood there, almost sympathetic. "I came to offer a solution." "Trying to buy me off now?" Declan growled. "You resign permanently. Transfer voting rights to me. I'll clean up the media mess. The Bennetts will let you see her." Occasionally, Declan looked at the man who had once been his role model. "Why? Why destroy everything I love?" Vincent's expression cracked, revealing a bitterness never seen before. "Your father chose you over me. Even though I gave my life to this company, I built this empire, and he handed it all to his precious son." Declan said nothing. As the door closed behind Vincent, he understood he had lost everything: his company, Lila, Amelia, and the dream he once believed in. A photo of Isabelle looked back at him from the desk. Her smile was like a wound, reminding him of everything he had failed to protect. Declan Hayes returned to the house of his childhood, the place he had avoided for years. Dust coated every frame, the musty scent of old memories filled the air. No more little voice calling Daddy, no one waiting at the end of the day. Only a man who had lost it all, and a decision he was about to make, one that would change everything. White sheets covered the dusty furniture. Memories seemed to lurk in every shadowed corner of the old house. After losing everything, Declan Hayes had withdrawn to the only place Vincent Crowley couldn't reach, his parents' old home, the modest house they lived in before they found success. A week had passed since his world collapsed. Not a single call from Lila. No replies, even though he had tried to explain the fabricated emails his lawyer had hit a wall. Every attempt to unravel the narrative Vincent had orchestrated led to a dead end. Declan reopened Isabelle's journal, reading her familiar handwriting over and over again, as if searching for something he'd missed. But in the end, it always came back to the same haunting line. "One day, we'll be a family. I let you down," he whispered. "I let Lila down, too." He wandered through the silent rooms until he stopped at his father's study. On the desk sat an old family photo, Declan at 10 years old, his parents smiling brightly. Only Vincent stood slightly apart, his gaze cold, unreadable. Had the resentment begun even then, and he just never saw it? Something compelled him to open the desk's old drawer. Inside were business documents, family papers, and a sealed envelope labeled Declan, written in his father's familiar hand. The letter had been written 2 days before his father died of a heart attack. "Declan, I'm growing increasingly concerned about Vincent's influence over you. To him, the company is the achievement of a lifetime, not a tool to create something meaningful. Remember why I built this company, not for power or money, but to create something lasting, something of value. Don't let ambition steal your chance at happiness. I lost too many years with you chasing the wrong ideals. But, in the end, what matters isn't the assets. It's you." The letter took his breath away. Declan sank into his father's chair, letting the words soak into his veins. He had spent his entire youth becoming the man Vincent wanted, cold, decisive, alone. But that was exactly what his father had tried to prevent. The doorbell rang, shattering the reverie. Tessa Quinn stood outside holding a thick folder. "I was worried about you," she said as she stepped inside. "And I found this." She placed the file on the table. Inside was clear evidence. Call logs and letters from Isabelle to Declan had been intercepted and cut off. Financial documents revealed Vincent had quietly restructured Declan's inheritance. Internal emails proved Vincent had contacted key clients urging them to withdraw their contracts. "How did you get all this?" Declan asked. Stunned Vincent's assistant likes me more than she likes him. Tessa smiled. It was enough to sue, enough to reclaim the company. But as Declan looked at the pile of evidence, he realized something: the company no longer mattered the way it once did. "I've been chasing the wrong thing," he said quietly. "The most valuable thing is being the father Lila deserves." Tessa looked at him silently. "So what will you do now?" He opened his phone, staring at Lila's drawing, a crayon family of 3 with Isabelle smiling down from the stars. "I know what I have to do." That night, Declan drove to the cemetery where Isabelle was buried. He used to avoid this place, afraid of the pain of the guilt. But now it was different. He knelt before her grave, I lost everything he said. Voice trembling. I wasn't there when you needed me. I let Vincent tear us apart, but I won't let him win. Not again. He told her about Lila, about her smile, her fierce eyes just like her mother's, about the mistakes, the betrayals, and the fear that had paralyzed him for so long. I'm gonna fight, he promised. Not with money or power, with the truth, with love, the way you always believed I would. As dawn crept through the trees, Declan felt something he thought he'd lost hope. The next morning, he stood in front of the Bennett's weathered front door, the file Tessa had assembled in his hands. Proof that could clear his name but couldn't guarantee it would heal the damage done. Helen Bennett opened the door, her face as cold as stone. I told you not to come back. Please, Declan whispered. Just 5 minutes, just to see Lila. Something in his eyes must have given her pause. After a few seconds of silence, she stepped aside, letting him in. The living room was silent, broken only by the steady beeping of medical equipment. Edward Bennett had been discharged from the hospital, but he remained bedridden, an oxygen tube across his weathered, aged face. You shouldn't be here, he said. Not with anger as Declan Hayes had feared, but softly. Declan gently placed the file on the table. I didn't know Isabelle was pregnant. These documents prove that Uncle Vincent intercepted all her calls, returned her letters, even fabricated emails. He's been manipulating all of us for years. Helen Bennett took the file, her hand trembling slightly as she turned each page. Even if it's true, she whispered, it doesn't erase the pain Lila's going through. She trusted you. I know. Declan nodded. And I'll spend the rest of my life earning that trust back. If you'll allow me to see her again. Edward and Helen exchanged a long, quiet look. At last, Edward gave a weak nod. She's staying at Jenna Miles's place, Isabelle's best friend. After everything that's happened, she didn't want to stay here. The understanding in Edward's eyes made Declan want to cry. The old man squeezed his hand gently. Isabelle wouldn't have given up, so don't you. Jenna's apartment was small but warm, every corner filled with photos of Isabelle laughing, radiant, full of life. Jenna greeted Declan with caution, but not hostility. She's confused, she said before letting him in. Lila thinks you knew and still abandoned her mother. In the living room, Lila sat curled on a chair, her tiny face carrying a sadness far beyond her years. When she met Declan's eyes, she turned away. Declan stepped forward, kneeling to her eye level. I need to tell you something. He slowly explained how Vincent had blocked all communication, showed her the letters that had never been delivered, and the evidence Tessa had uncovered. Most importantly, he gave her the memory box Isabelle had prepared, filled with handwritten letters, videos, and birthday messages for the years ahead. Your mom never stopped trying to find me, he said gently, and if I'd known nothing could have kept me from finding you. Lila looked at him guarded. Uncle Vincent said you didn't want me. That's why you disappeared. He lied, Declan said firmly. I was wrong, not to know, but I never didn't love you. He brought out a small box. Inside was the deed to his childhood home. I moved in for good. It's close to your school, has a big backyard, and there's a room waiting for you whenever you're ready. Lila's eyes widened. What about your fancy apartment and the company? They're not as important as you, Declan said softly. The steel in her gaze began to soften. I think. I need time. As long as you need, he smiled. I'll be here always. That afternoon, Declan visited Amelia Vaughn at the school. I have proof that clears my name, he said as he stepped into the classroom. Vincent fabricated everything. Amelia looked over the documents. I wanted to believe you. Lila misses you a lot. She keeps drawing pictures of you in art class. I was wrong to let work come before people, wrong to listen to him, but loving her, that was never a mistake. The coldness in Amelia's eyes faded. Friday is the father-daughter dance. Maybe you could still come. Declan's lawyer reviewed the file Tessa had prepared, his expression growing more confident. This is enough to remove Vincent from the board, maybe even press charges. Some board members have already started questioning his leadership as stock plummets. But Declan barely heard any of it. His eyes had stopped on a detail in his father's will, one Vincent had hidden for years. Hayes Dominion must establish a charitable foundation in your mother's name. The profits will go to children who've lost their parents, like Lila nearly lost everything. His father's vision, not power but purpose, suddenly became clear. That evening, Declan called a respected board member. "I need your help," he said, "not to reclaim my title, but to become what this company was meant to be." That night, Hayes Dominion's annual charity gala shimmered with crystal lights. Beneath chandeliers, politicians and executives discussed vacation estates, stock movements, and million-dollar deals. Declan Hayes, no longer CEO, entered the hall in a sharp suit. His heart clenched tight, his hand held tightly onto Lila's as they walked through the crowd like strangers. He was no longer a man of power, just a father with the truth in his pocket and love in his heart. "Are you scared, Dad?" Lila Bennett asked softly, her wide eyes searching. The word Dad still warmed Declan Hayes's chest every time she said it. The past 2 weeks had been a time of careful mending weekends where Lila stayed at Declan's childhood home, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. A little he smiled, but doing the right thing is more important than being afraid. Beside them, Amelia Vaughn stood quietly in a simple blue dress. She had long been the calm anchor in the storm of his life. "No matter what happens," she said gently, "we're with you," inside the grand ballroom of the gala. Vincent Crowley was leisurely chatting with the city's elite, but his smile faltered the moment he saw Declan. "You weren't invited," Vincent said coldly, stepping forward. "Actually, I was," Declan replied calmly. "Several board members wanted me here to review current leadership." Vincent's eyes narrowed at Lila, sharp and scornful. "Bringing a child here? Even worse than I thought, unexpectedly." Lila stepped forward. "He didn't make me come, I wanted to." The room went still. "This party isn't for children." Vincent spat. "Just like lies shouldn't be used to separate a father and daughter." Declan replied. He nodded to Tessa Quinn. On the large screen, evidence began to appear. Fabricated emails, returned letters, altered financial reports. Declan faced the crowd. "For 8 years, Vincent Crowley concealed the fact that I had a daughter. He intercepted communication from Isabelle Bennett, returned letters, and fabricated a false narrative to maintain control." Gasps rippled through the room as more documents appeared on screen. "He manipulated clients into withdrawing from the company to force the board to remove me." Declan continued. "I'm not here to reclaim the CEO title. I'm here because my father built Hayes Dominion with a greater purpose to help children who've lost their parents. Like my daughter nearly lost both hers." Vincent grabbed the microphone, shouting, "Ridiculous! You're just desperate." A trembling voice came from the entrance. "No, it's the truth." Edward Bennett entered, supported by Helen, an oxygen tube at his side. The room fell silent. "We've seen the evidence." Helen said he deceived everyone. Vincent's face turned crimson with rage. "This company is mine. I built it while William pampered his precious son." His words were soaked in bitterness, exposing the envy buried for years. 3 board members rose and walked to Declan's side. Loyalty had shifted. In desperation, Vincent pulled Declan aside. "Leave. Now I'll give you back the CEO title, full control. Just stop this. Let the girl live in peace with her grandparents." Declan looked at the man who had once been a mentor, a relative, a betrayer. "You still don't get it." He said, "I'm not choosing between Lila and the company. I'm choosing to become the man Isabelle believed in, the father Lila deserves. You're making a huge mistake, no." Declan replied, "My mistake was ever believing success mattered more than family." Vincent turned away in fury. Lila quietly took Declan's hand. "You chose me," she whispered, eyes glistening. "I'll always choose you." Declan replied, lifting her into his arms. The chairman of the board approached. "We need to talk about the future of Hayes Dominion." Declan nodded, but his eyes remained on Lila's smile. The only measure of success that mattered. News headlines exploded. Hayes Dominion reclaims its legacy. Truth revealed. Nephew takes over, uncle disgraced. But Declan knew Vincent wasn't done. 3 days after the gala, his fears were confirmed. The Bennett home was eerily quiet. No Edward watching the window, no Helen cooking in the kitchen. On the table sat a yellow envelope. His name, scrawled on the front and side, was a court order and a letter from Helen. "We've taken Lila to the lake house. Vincent's lawyer submitted evidence that your current financial state may endanger Lila's future. We need time to think. Don't come looking." Declan's hands trembled as he dialed. No one answered. The lake house was 4 hours away, and they had left without a word. When he called his lawyer, her voice was tense. Vincent moved fast. "He's filed an emergency motion requesting the court strip you of custody on the grounds of financial instability." He used Edward's medical expenses. Declan Hayes' lawyer said heavily, "He's been secretly covering the hospital bills this whole time. That's made the Bennetts financially dependent on Vincent Crowley. He can't take Lila." Declan whispered, his chest tightening. "There's one more thing," the lawyer added. "Tomorrow's board meeting. Vincent's been lobbying the minority shareholders, saying you're mentally unstable and a danger to the company. He's offering to buy out their shares at a premium." The whole world felt like it was tipping sideways. Even after exposing the truth, even with Vincent's real face now revealed, Declan still stood at risk of losing both Lila and the legacy his father built. "What should I do?" he asked, desperate. "Choose," the lawyer replied bluntly. "Fight to keep the company, or fight for your daughter. We don't have the resources for both battles." What once seemed like a clear path had now become an impossible choice. Hayes' Dominion wasn't just about money. It was the security he wanted to build for Lila, the foundation for the charity he had dreamed of. But Lila was the present, was life itself. That night, Declan drove back to his childhood home. Lila's drawings still covered the fridge. Her favorite stuffed elephant lay quietly on the bed. Every detail was living proof of a family taking shape. His phone rang. Amelia Vaughn. "The Bennetts called the school," she said, voice tense. "They're pulling Lila from class temporarily," Vincent Declan replied coldly. After ending the call, he sat in his father's old study, his mind heavy. Should he fight for the company to secure Lila's future, or fight for custody of a child already burdened with so much pain? A knock on the door broke his thoughts. Tessa Quinn entered, looking serious. "You need to see this," she said, handing him a tablet. On the screen was a video clip pulled from Hayes Dominion's internal system. The footage showed Vincent Crowley facing Isabelle Bennett. She had just learned she was pregnant. The timestamp, 8 years ago. "If you go through with this, I'll destroy him," Vincent said. "Declan will lose everything. His wealth, his future. Is that the life you want for your child's father?" Isabelle's voice trembled. "He deserves to know he has a child. Then you both will pay," Vincent threatened. "Consider this your only warning." The video ended. Declan sat motionless, ice cold. "How did you find this?" he asked. "I found it in an encrypted archive," Tessa said. Vincent kept it as leverage. The pain inside him solidified into something sharper resolve. This was no longer just about him and Lila. This was about justice for the woman who had sacrificed everything so her daughter could know her father. A message came from Helen. "Lila keeps asking about you. She doesn't understand why we left." Attached was a photo. Lila hugging the necklace with her mother's picture, tears streaming down her face. Declan stood up. Vincent had drawn a line: either lose his child or lose the company. But perhaps there was a third path, one that would cost him everything, but that might finally make things right. At dawn, the cemetery was veiled in mist, early sunlight filtering through the haze. Declan walked slowly to Isabelle's grave, a fresh bouquet of flowers in hand. He wasn't surprised to find Vincent already there. "You knew I'd come," Declan said. "You're as predictable as your father," Vincent replied. Not turning, Declan knelt and placed the flowers beside Isabelle's name, carved into the stone. "I've made my decision. I'm not going to fight you for the company." Vincent turned, the hint of triumph flickering on his face. Finally, some sense. "No," Declan said calmly. "I finally understand what courage means. I've transferred all my shares to the Isabelle Bennett Foundation, a charity for single parents and children who've lost a parent." Vincent paled. "What all the paperwork was finalized last night," Declan said. "Those shares can't be sold or transferred. They serve only the purpose my father envisioned, what you twisted for your own greed." Vincent lunged, grabbing Declan by the collar. "You've destroyed everything I built." "No," Declan said, brushing him off. "I've saved the only thing still worth saving. The board won't accept this. They already have 4 members signed as founding trustees this morning." Vincent's face contorted in fury. "What about the girl? No company, no money. How will you raise her?" "I don't need millions to be a good father," Declan answered. "Isabelle always knew that." "And now I finally understand." Vincent's presence seemed to shrink, his strength withering. He looked 10 years older in a single breath. "You chose a child over an empire. I chose love over power." Declan said, "Something you've never understood." Vincent tried one last jab. "What about Helen and Edward? They took her." Declan smiled, eyes lifting to the sun, just breaking through the clouds. "They'll come back, and this time I won't let anyone keep us apart. They're bringing her back today." Declan Hayes said, eyes fixed on the cold headstone bearing the name Isabelle Bennett. After watching the video of you threatening her, they understood everything. The court also denied your custody petition. Vincent Crowley's expression changed for the first time. Declan saw something in the man who once seemed invincible: fear. That video was private property. Vincent murmured. Nothing stays hidden forever, Declan replied, especially the truth. Vincent looked again at Isabelle's grave, then turned his gaze back to his nephew. What happens to me now? He asked quietly. That's up to you. Declan said, step down and disappear quietly, and I won't press charges. But if you stay, I'll make sure the world knows what you did to Lila's mother, to me, and to the girl herself. For a moment, Vincent looked like he might resist, but then his shoulders slumped. You never understood. He whispered, everything I did was for the family name. No. Declan shook his head. You did it for yourself, and you traded the family to get it. Vincent Crowley turned away, walking slowly down the cemetery path. As his figure faded into the distance, Declan placed a hand on the cold stone and whispered, It's over. He can't hurt us anymore. A soft sound stirred the stillness. The Bennett's old station wagon pulling into the gravel lot. Helen Bennett stepped out first, followed by Edward Bennett moving slowly with his oxygen tank beside him. The back door opened and Lila Bennett burst out, tears streaming. Daddy, she cried, throwing herself into his arms. Declan hugged her tightly, tears spilling freely. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere behind them. Amelia Vaughn stepped out of the car, her smile shining through tears. Farther back, the morning sun beamed down, casting light on the name Isabelle Bennett, etched in stone, a silent witness to a family finally reunited after so many years apart. 1 year later, the backyard of Declan's childhood home rang with laughter. Flowers bloomed brightly. A new swing set stood proudly, and a small dog named Daisy chased Lila across the freshly mown lawn. Need help, came Amelia Vaughn's voice from the steps where Declan was arranging birthday cupcakes on the table. Desperately, he smiled, pulling her in for a kiss. Their love had grown quietly over the past year, steadily, gently built on school pickups, bedtime stories, and unspoken patience. Hard to believe, Declan said, watching Lila excitedly show her grandparents how high she could swing. She's 7 already. Edward and Helen Bennett were now a permanent part of the family. Since escaping Vincent's shadow, Edward's health had improved significantly. They shared Sunday dinners, holidays, and everyday life, honestly, peacefully. Isabelle would be proud, Amelia said softly, of both of us. Declan nodded his hand, brushing the frame of Isabelle's photo displayed prominently in the living room, her memory kept alive through stories told to Lila and woven into everyday moments. The memory box Isabelle had prepared had become a sacred ritual. Each birthday, Lila opened another letter from her mother. Daddy, look! Lila shouted, pointing toward the gate. Aunt Claire's here. Declan chuckled. Claire Monroe. Isabelle's best friend had become Lila's unofficial aunt, always arriving with stories about her mother, keeping those memories burning bright. The doorbell rang. Declan opened it to find Tessa Quinn holding a large, wrapped gift. Sorry, I'm late, she said. The meeting ran long. Jessica Parker Foundation's new scholarship program is launching. How many kids this time? Declan asked. 15 orphans kids who lost parents. Full university scholarships. A familiar warmth spread through Declan's chest. The foundation he created in Isabelle's memory had now helped hundreds of families. Her legacy didn't just live on in their daughter, it reached far beyond into places no one could have imagined. Any word from Vincent, Tessa asked gently. Declan shook his head. He had disappeared from public life after the final board meeting. Rumors said he lived in seclusion overseas. Occasionally, Lila received postcards, awkward distant, perhaps a late attempt at connection. Declan never interfered. Lila would decide for herself one day. She deserves to decide for herself about family when she grows up. Amelia Vaughn said gently, wiping the tray of cupcakes she had just brought out from the kitchen. Declan, it's time. In the dining room, everyone gathered around the cozy round table. On the birthday cake, 7 glowing candles flickered. Lila Bennett sat in the seat of honor, her eyes shining with excitement. Before lighting the candles, Declan Hayes handed her a small velvet box, a new family tradition. He said softly, his gaze tender, "This used to belong to your mom. She wore it when she was your age." Lila slowly opened the lid, revealing a delicate silver bracelet adorned with tiny heart and star charms. She slipped it on next to the silver locket she always wore, the one with her mother's photo inside. "Do you think Mom can see us?" she whispered, her eyes glistening. "I'm sure she can," Declan replied quietly, his throat tightening. After Lila blew out the candles and opened all her presents, Declan found a quiet moment sitting alone on the wooden porch swing. Laughter from his daughter echoed inside, where Amelia was helping her try on a new dress. The peace of that moment, a happy child, a home filled with love, was all he had ever wished for. His phone buzzed with a new email from the company board. Though no longer CEO, Declan remained connected to his father's legacy through the Isabelle Bennett Foundation. The company, now under new leadership, was thriving, its humanitarian mission fully restored. The sunset spread a pink-purple glow across the sky. Declan leaned back, reflecting on the road he had traveled 8 years away from his daughter, time he could never reclaim. But the future ahead was open and radiant. The back door creaked softly. Lila stepped out and sat beside him on the swing. "I read Mom's birthday letter," she whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "What did she say?" he asked gently, wrapping his arm around her. "She told me to remember that love is the most important thing, more important than money or fame." Lila looked up, her eyes serious. "Like what you did, right? Choosing me instead of the company." Tears rolled down Declan's cheeks, not from sadness, but from deep, quiet joy at his daughter's gentle understanding. "That's exactly right," he whispered. "I think Mom would be really happy." Lila said, her slender fingers brushing the silver bracelet. "We've built the family she always dreamed of." Declan kissed the top of her head, his heart so full it ached. Isabelle had known what truly mattered long before he did, but now he had finally learned the greatest lesson life had to offer. No success is worth more than the people you love. The sky darkened, the first star appeared. Father and daughter sat quietly on the swing, rocking gently in the evening breeze and the stillness of a journey come full circle. Not the family Declan once imagined, but the one he was always meant to have. And so ends the emotional journey of a man from a cold, high-powered businessman at the pinnacle of success to a father who learned to place his daughter above all achievements. A journey not only to rediscover blood ties, but also to rediscover himself. From the forgotten letters to the silver bracelet passed from mother to daughter, Every detail stands as proof that love never fades, no matter how deeply buried by time, how forcefully obstructed by lies, or how painfully interrupted by misunderstandings. But just like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, that love always finds its way home. What makes this story truly touching isn't just the moving reunions, but the difficult choices the main character had to face. Between power and responsibility, success and family past and present, he chose the right thing, love. Because sometimes the most important things aren't found in profit reports or boardroom meetings, but in the eager eyes of a child waiting for her father to come home, or the word "daddy" finally spoken after years of silence. If this story moved you, if you found yourself teary-eyed in those seemingly small but deeply meaningful moments, don't forget to hit like to support us, share to spread this message of humanity, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story that might touch your heart. Thank you for staying with us until the very last second. See you in the next story where every moment might stir your heart once more.